Chromebook screen not turning on. It normally doesn't do that.
I think I would have still picked the page.
Oh, yeah. Huh. And so we are on the Cold War. And so, hey, it is December the 4th, and we're going more over the Cold War for our dual credit class. And last time we left off about the growing tensions in the Korean Peninsula between communist forces and NATO forces in the West, or well, the United Nations as well. So, Soviets have the bomb, and this is going to cause, like, I put anxiety because this is going to cause a lot of anxiety in America. Now, all of a sudden, our greatest ideological opponents have the bomb, something super, super scary. So, all right, so here's a map of Korea with, you see that line in the middle is what we call the demilitarized zone that starts at the 38th parallel running northeast. And this separates North and South Korea. And so you see,
Is it like a wall?
it's actually essentially two walls. We have a wall on our, and then there's like a field, a strip of barren land. Yeah, the no man land. And then they have a wall as well. And occasionally, guys who are stationed there, like there's U.S. Army base, a major U.S. Army base there, just outside of Seoul, and they like sometimes they shoot at each other. Nobody really dies, but sometimes they'll catch North Korean soldiers trying to infiltrate into South Korea. Sometimes they'll find people who are just trying to make a break for it and run to freedom. So
And then we'll help them, right?
Yeah, if they make it, they get help. But I mean, like it's still treated as a ceasefire war zone.
And how big is it?
I don't know. Big.
Big.
It's bigly. All right, so the Korean War. After the American and Soviet withdrawal, remember there was tensions. We both went there. Things calmed down. Both Korean governments, North and South, claimed to be the rightful Korea. With approval from the Kremlin, that's in Russia, in 1950, Kim Il-sung began a near completely successful invasion of South Korea. So the North Koreans are going to have a lot of initial success taking over Korea. Truman then asked the United Nations to intervene in Korea and called for a ceasefire while calling for UN support for South Korea. And this was called under a police action, not a war, policing action. This was declared as an illegal invasion according to the agreements we had before we left. Said you broke international law, so the nations of the world would get together and police you back into conformity. Though nearly 70% of Americans supported intervention, the National Guard, the reserves, and the draft was needed due to low volunteerism. Not a lot, unlike World War I, the Civil War, Spanish-American War, or World War II. Not a lot of people cared here in the States. We wanted this little piece of earth that most Americans never heard of to be free of communism, but nobody wanted to go die for it. So that's why the part-time soldiers had to be called in. And also we had to have a draft as well. With General Douglas MacArthur at the head of the United UN forces, only the southern tip of the peninsula was held by American forces. So Kim Il-sung was very successful in his initial push and was able to take almost everything. And that includes the capital of South Korea.
What's Kremlin?
The Kremlin is, it's inside of Moscow. You could essentially think of it as the Capitol building for the Soviets.
Are those L's or is that a Kim? Kim Il-sung?
IL. If you look very closely, you'll see,
There's a slight difference.
yeah, this is slightly shorter than this. This is capital I, this is lowercase l. Yeah. Just so you know. Now, I can't guarantee there's going to be a lot of questions regarding the Korean War on your EOC. I think that's one of the topics they kind of breeze over usually. But I don't know. I think it's important because this is going to help explain a lot of the tensions we still have today with China and Korea. And it's also going to explain one of the first times where you really have America join the United Nations and start what we call military intervention in other countries because they're not behaving. And we're going to do it in Vietnam. I participated in something like this in Kosovo, did in Yugoslavia, Grenada. I mean, just a lot of countries, right? So that's why some people criticize and sometimes say, you know, they're acting like the world's police. And in some ways we do. In some ways we do.
Which maybe the whole thing was.
Yeah, maybe it is. I mean, genocide's a pretty bad thing. And if nobody's going to bother to stop it, what's the point of being around?
Right.
Right. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
Now, okay. Why is my screen black? Oh, it's not a permanent thing, or I'll have to have this on all the time. Maybe I just need to restart it. I haven't restarted this in like sometime.
Soon.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, it doesn't look like anybody's watching the stream right now, so hopefully she'll watch the recording. So.
Remember that one string was always in all of your strings?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially my 10th grade. I had my 10th grade class. I'd have somebody would watch and they type questions and stuff in the live chat. I'm like, I was like, I don't know.
Hey, they were trying to learn.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I put it on YouTube. I mean, but because I put it on YouTube, that's why one of the reasons I don't show your faces because that would be wrong. But I also turn off the comments because there's no like, get some like creepers down there. But I do not like the Google one. I don't like the Google recordings.
Meet?
Yeah, I do not like it. That I get to save this. I don't know. Bless you. I mean, the cool thing about Google Meet though is when you do Google Meet, it will save a video file of your recording and send it to you, and you'll have it in email and in your Google Drive. The bad thing is if you have a limited space Google Drive, it'll like get packed up quick with video files, and but then you can use the file for whatever you want to. If you want to post it somewhere, or just like give it some mail on your phone or whatever. So that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one. Hey, there we go. So here we have some soldiers storming up in Korea. So we're definitely going to turn things around, and we're going to take almost the entire peninsula before we kind of get pushed back to where we started. But sorry, a stalemate's better than
What
complete
pushes
losing.
us back?
A million Chinamen. So yeah, it's gonna be like a problem. So
So China comes in and helps North Korea?
yeah.
Why?
Well,
Weren't they?
there's actually a lot of reasons why Mao did it. Mao had only just took his country in the communist revolution, and he was going through a very long process of trying to get rid of people who were unwanted in his own country. Was one. He had a huge population problem that was leading to starvation because they were actually using pre-medieval farming methods under his revolution because, you know, he's got to control everything. But also there was a lot of dissidents, people who weren't necessarily on board with the ideology. So if you send them to the war and with full intentions of putting them on the front to die, then you didn't have to worry about them anymore. So he had a lot of reasons. This and by showing that his new little country could throw back the Western superpower, America, all of a sudden he had higher status than Stalin, which he like really, really wanted. That and they didn't want the U.S. Army to be right on their border. They were really scared of that. He thought like it could have been a staging ground for a further invasion. All right, so September the 15th, 1950, 70,000 U.S. soldiers landed at the center of Korea, near Seoul, in the Battle of Incheon. It's Incheon. So we're pushed all the way to the southern tip. So instead of starting from the southern tip and finding our way up, we just circle around and get them from behind. Because we still had a pretty powerful navy, and we had a huge set of bases in Japan, which was a great place for us to get supplies, fix our ships up, and have a staging area. Because Japan is like right next door to Korea. This surprise attack turned the war around for Americans as the North Korean army fell apart. As the North Korean forces fled back across the 38th parallel, if you remember that map, the goals of the police action had been accomplished. Hooray, mission accomplished. With the UN backing, however, American forces pushed past the 30th parallel in order to reunify all of Korea. They're like, hey, the North Koreans are bad actors. They told us they'd behave, and instead they invaded their neighbors, killed a bunch of people. Let's just get rid of them and make Korea whole again. Well, that sounds like a good idea. By November the 24th, 1950, the UN and American Army had made it to the Chinese-Korean border at the Yalu River. So that looked pretty good. Looks like, got everything back. 2 days later, however, China sent around 300,000 troops into Korea.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's just the first wave. They will send more. So,
How did we keep them at the 38th parallel line?
Well, this is going to be one of the biggest retreats in U.S. history. There's going to be a lot of heroism, a lot of fighting in mountains, like North Korea is very mountainous. And also this is during the winter, so there's a lot of snowstorms and blizzards, really cold. And so, yeah, a lot of the fighting was done in the dark of the night, snow coming, you can't see. The Chinese used tactics where they didn't even bother giving a lot of their soldiers guns. They just gave them like hand grenades and told them to go run at the U.S. troops. And when you get close enough, throw the grenades. They would tie tourniquets around their limbs, so if they got shot in the arms or the legs, they wouldn't bleed out. They could keep fighting.
Is that smart or is it dumb?
It's smart if you want to use someone like as a machine until they just fall apart. But I mean, and if you make it, you might, but I mean, they didn't have any like real surgery or anything. So if they got wounded in a limb, they were probably gone already, eventually anyways, from infection and shock, just all that. So yeah, I mean, we use tourniquets today rather successfully, but back then, if you had a tourniquet, that meant amputation. But I wouldn't trust the Chinese army in the 1950s to amputate my arm or leg and hope I survive through it. So it would have been like the Civil War. If you're lucky, you got some liquor, which didn't really help, just made you bleed faster, and then they took a whole rusty saw to it. So not too fun. Not too fun. Nowadays, they're very good at restoring blood into the limb as they release the tourniquet. Usually you want a surgeon to release one, like in the hospital.
UN American Army.
It was mostly American forces, but of course we had help from like British, Australia, Canadian, stuff like that. It was like multiple friendly nations put together, but mostly American forces. So it is a coalition, right?
Are united.
The only reason we got pushed back was because we didn't send all the troops we had.
Well, that's part of it. It was a complete surprise. We were really thrown off. We had no idea this was going to happen. And so the cool thing is like, fortunately, one of the reasons why we didn't get totally annihilated is because we had air power and they didn't. We had tanks, which were very helpful, but the Chinese still had some artillery, and they just had a lot of troops, lot of troops, and just those numbers were just way too much for our forces to keep up with. So yeah, it was pretty tough battles. Lots of accounts of just wave after wave of defending Americans having to just survive these Chinese, and the Chinese would just, so many of them would perish. They would use their own men as like walls, like sandbags to stop the American bullets. They just keep coming multiple ways. They would use bugles, kind of like the Civil War or an older war, to tell their troops what to do. And they'll keep doing that actually through Vietnam. So it's just, yep, I'm pretty crafty. Yeah, that's how it was. Lots of people. All right, moving on.
Can I go, a little bit more
Yeah, sure, go ahead. All right, I believe these are some Marines just trying to take a break amongst all the fighting. One major problem was a lot of these troops is that not only was it cold and conditions like that, but resupply was very difficult. Because of all the snowstorms, they couldn't even, in the mountains, it was very hard to even get airdrops of resupply. There's many stories of where soldiers and Marines would expend so much ammo at just the throngs of Chinese that they'd run out of bullets, run out of food. They're wounded, would have to try to help them out the best they could. Tough stuff. All right, so the Chinese invasion shocked the U.S. and UN forces, as many units were surrounded and overran. U.S. casualties were as high as 12,000, while the communists lost over 3 times as many men. Over the next 3 weeks, the UN and U.S. troops were pushed back to the 38th parallel. MacArthur called for the bombing of the bridges along the Yalu River with atomic weapons. So he wanted to use A-bombs along the Korean-Chinese border, all along it. He wanted to make the area so irradiated that no one could live there for 100 years. He thought, hey, we can keep Korea as long as we just nuke the snot out of the north part of it. He also wanted to have a naval blockade of China and to use Chinese nationalist forces to attack mainland China. Now, Chinese nationalists, remember, those are the free Chinese who went to Taiwan, and they wanted their country back. They just lost the Civil War and had to flee. Truman only allowed him to use regular bombs along the bridges to slow down their forces with conventional weapons in order to avoid World War III. The USSR, Soviets, and China were about as best friends as you could be at this time. Mao almost worshipped Stalin. He looked to him constantly for advice, and all the help that he could get was only from them. Nobody else would trade with China at this time. So the Soviets would have totally helped out China if we had blocked their country off from the rest of the world.
That probably would have started.
Probably would have. And if we would have, threw like A-bombs at them. And if we would have supported an invasion of their country. Those 3 things probably would have started World War III. So Truman was right. MacArthur was just so fixated on victory at all costs. It was like, and he was just so mad too. He had this great victory where we managed to take the whole peninsula, and then he felt it was snatched from him. So.
Communists lost 3 times as many.
Yeah. Yeah, the first part, there's still going to be a lot of fighting. It's going to take years before we actually have peace in Korea. It's kind of like Vietnam. The peace treaty went on forever while people kept dying in the jungle. Unlike, say, World War I and World War II, when the armies, when the war was over, it was just over, you know.
Bombing the bridges would destroy them, right?
Yes, and so, yeah, they wanted to stop any vehicles or anything like that. But now, in mainland China, though, the war was unpopular, but people weren't able to voice it. So they had forced draftings there. There's a lot of stories whenever the military would come in to get some of the young men to go, a lot of them would like just go hide, or run to the mountains and try to hide from the draft, because many of them believed that going to the war to fight us in Korea was a death sentence. And in a lot of ways, it's true. And of course, if you fought in the war, if you were wounded, you didn't get anything. You just went home as a broke person who couldn't work. If you died, your family didn't get anything. And if you lived, you basically just left your family to tend to their little farms by themselves and potentially starve. So a lot of them really didn't want to participate in this.
The Americans or
The Chinese. Because, it was something like 90% of Chinese people were farmers. But after the revolution, a lot of them were starving because they had to pay taxes in rice for the most part. And there was so much rice taken from them that many of them were like drastically losing weight. Their life expectancy went down. So it was rough. But China's faced starvation for like centuries. Like it's just.
Now they're having overpopulation problems.
They are. Yeah.
Or too low population problems.
Well,
some country is facing too low because they're like, we'll only have boys. So there's like one woman for like every 28 men.
yeah, there's a lot of Chinese dudes who can't find wives over there. So that's a big demographic issue for them. But yeah, even like stories from Marco Polo or even like when Adam Smith would write in the 1600s about people who've been to China, all they would talk, they would always bring up the crazy starvation that goes on in China. So
My grandpa was in the cleanup of China. Korea.
oh yeah.
He told me a story about he was patrolling something this one time, and he could figure out how to patrol sleeping. So he would like zone out and like fall asleep while he was walking, and he'd like come back to it, and he'd still be walking.
Oh yeah, when you've been up for days at a time and you're just so tired from that, yeah. Oh yeah, I've had times where I've fallen asleep on my feet, or like just stay up so many days, you just start seeing things at night. I guess just, or you go without you like if you like or like we go on sometimes we go on calorie restriction, and so your sweat starts to smell like ammonia, and that's a sign of when
What is ammonia?
like ammonia cleaners and stuff.
Oh.
So yeah, and that's a sign of when your body starts
deteriorating.
using muscle for energy instead of fat. So like if you run your fat down low enough, you start using muscle tissue. So. Cool.
I don't think I'll ever have that.
Yeah, for that, that's how you know. All right, yeah. My grandfather had crazy stories out of Korea. He was actually a missile operator, a Nike surface to air missile operator. But the thing is, when they sent him down to Korea, they're like, we don't need these because they didn't have any aircraft. So he wound up driving a Jeep most of the time and stuff like that. He would drive around officers.
I think my grandfather.
Huh?
I think my grandfather. He was in the Air Force.
Oh yeah, the Air Force got a lot of action in Korea.
Yeah.
They just went pew pew.
I was too young to understand what he did, so I don't know.
Yeah, my grandfather's brother passed away there though.
It's not like the Koreans could do anything against planes.
Well, they could shoot at them, and a lot of them did get shot up enough, 'cause especially when they were making low passes and stuff. And some of them did have anti-aircraft artillery. So here we have soldiers speaking with some Korean natives. So to avoid further conflict, Truman decided to abandon the reunification of Korea altogether and to end the conflict. General MacArthur publicly criticized Truman, who then in return fired the general for challenging the commander-in-chief. This was unheard of for a military officer to criticize his commander, the president of the United States. It was very embarrassing for Truman. So a lot of Americans, however, supported MacArthur because of his victories in Korea and, of course, World War II in the Pacific. So this was a national crisis. During 2 years of peace negotiations, the conflict carried on, resulting in 125,000 U.S. and UN casualties. By the 26th of July, 1953, the final ceasefire came into effect. The war had cost America $20 billion and 33,000 lives. During this war, the Truman administration, now this war is often called the Forgotten War because it's like one of the first modern conflicts America participated in that did, like, unlike World War I, World War II, the soldiers couldn't come back home for a victory parade, right? There were no, like Hollywood wasn't pumping out movies showing the great exploits of this war, like heroes and stuff. It's kind of like the nation just wanted to kind of forget about it. During this war, the Truman administration helped to rearm West Germany and Italy. They're like, okay, you guys are reformed. You're no longer fascist, but we sure could use your help to make sure communists don't spread throughout Europe. In Asia and the Pacific, the American military stepped up its efforts to ward off Soviet influence. So we shall see. So that wraps up the Korean War. We're going to have the demilitarized zone still there today, and all of that. So it's going to be one of these open wounds of the Cold War.
This is going on during the Cold War?
Yes.
No,
The Cold War is right at the end of World War II. So yeah, we're about 10 years into the Cold War. And the Cold War, remember,
The Cold War is just us against Russia.
yeah, but we're not fighting each other directly.
We're like helping others fight each
Pretty
other
much.
and fight our
Cold War's
enemies.
yours.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not-
You could think of it almost as and that a lot of spy networks working against one another, governments working against one another, and definitely military expansion. Though.
How many communist lives were lost?
30,000?
I don't know.
No,
Wait, if you
Uh,
said 300,000, I'd be like,
yeah,
I
Could've-
don't know.
just a guess, maybe around 500,000. I'm not sure.
$20 billion though,
Back then, money.
which is a lot of money now.
Yeah. So that was a big deal, Pickle.
How?
Hmm?
That's expensive.
It is expensive. It's going to be these veterans of World War II and Korea that are essentially going to shape the military that will take part in the Vietnam War as well. So a lot of Korean the people who fought in Korea were World War II veterans. A lot of people who fought in Vietnam were Korean War veterans. And so on and so forth.
Can you serve like a ton of wars?
As many as you can live through while you're of age, yeah.
Wolverine.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, you just have to be virtually immortal. But yeah, it's not like it's not unheard of to in Vietnam some of the older commanders to have been a World War II and a Korean War vet, right?
Right.
Or it's not unheard of for somebody who in the early 2000s who was a commander in or a senior non-commissioned officer to serve in Afghanistan and Iraq, but way back in the day, maybe the old Gulf War back in the 90s, or I guess could push it back to the 80s, but that's not pushing it. Like you got Grenada and Panama and all that. And of course, you got Kosovo conflict, which for a lot of us who went there, it wasn't a hot war, but I knew quite a few guys who were there in the early days. And yeah, they got shot at and blowed up and stuff like that. So.
Nice.
This and some news. Get the Vietnam War.
Oh, yes.
I don't think we're going to finish Vietnam though before your test, but we'll do the best we can. Okay, so like I said, that's probably it. All right, let's go to the next one.
Next one.
Oh, spaghetti. Hey, I think this has to do with a guy named Senator McCarthy, known for starting something we know today as McCarthyism. So,
Wait, is he the dude in the very middle?
yeah, right there. And so during this time period, there's going to we're going to have like yet another Red Scare, essentially. And this time, a lot of it's going to center around Hollywood, with the idea that a lot of Hollywood producers and people like that, directors and well-to-do folks, and even a lot of leaders in industry are communist sympathizers and need to be rooted out because
the
they're
Rocket
working.
Man movie?
The Rocket Man movie?
Did you see that movie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the premise. I remember he had the jetpack.
Yeah, he finds this jetpack and there's some famous Hollywood movie. Hollywood star that's actually a German spy.
There was some of that.
Yeah.
Like Ronald Reagan, when he was when he was in Hollywood, yeah, he said it. There was quite a few people there who were like Soviet sympathizers. All right, so the Red Scare again. Domestically, the fight against communism was also ramped up following World War II, and it's here at the home front. In 1947, right after the war, Truman enacted the Federal Employee Loyalty Program. Under the program, those who worked for the federal government could be fired on the grounds that they held disloyal feelings or actions towards America. So, in a sense, this is a new kind of thing, where it's saying if you don't have the right ideology, the American government will fire you from an American government job. So what this starts is where you have a bunch of he said, she said, where supervisors and employees would accuse one another of being disloyal, leading to 3,000 being fired between 47 and 1951. Some of these may have been false. Imagine if you didn't like your boss, and your boss was like, if you mess up again, you're getting fired. And you're like, no, I'm not, because you're a communist. And then you turn them in, and now your bad boss is gone. This kind of thing happened a lot in Nazi Germany and a lot in the Soviet Union. So you
And
getting
that's called, what's ism?
what is it called? It's like where neighbors are it's like a police state kind of really. We're like all watching and spying on each other to try to get something. That's why it's bad to incentivize people to tell on their neighbors, because sometimes you might really want that incentive and you'll turn in innocent people. It's similar to the days of the antebellum America right before the Civil War. If you were a slave catcher in the North, you got paid $5 if you captured a black person and you're like, oh, they're actually a free person, you let them go. If you captured a black person and they were a slave and you returned, you got $10. So when they showed you their papers, they were free. You just tore it up, took them back for the extra $5. So, that's corruption. Whenever you incentivize people to be corrupt, they're going to be corrupt. So, it's sad. It's sad.
It should have been opposite.
You would think so. Yeah.
It'd be cool if people just did that for the extra $5 to free them. Be like, hey, let's forge some papers real quick to get you free. I want an extra $5.
Yeah, but the South, like they did that to try to keep the Civil War from happening. The South would threw a big old hissy fit. It probably was started earlier. It was just a bunch of band-aids trying to hold the tire together. It didn't hold there. All right, so under this order, the accused had no right to confront their accuser. Very un-American. or to refute evidence held against them. Once again, they're facing financial loss, and they can't even they can't have a hearing. You're just fired like an at-will employee. Across America, many began to fear the enemy within as stories of Soviet sympathizers ran rampant. It was all through the papers.
So what's that dude's name again?
That's McCarthy.
So what is McCarthy?
Hey. McCarthyism is whenever you essentially have political witch hunts to root out an ideology,
Mm.
but it's often criticized as being a sign of paranoia.
I mean, it is.
It actually, yeah, it really can be something that can be very badly used against people.
COVID?
And it plays off of
With
fear.
COVID,
Yeah, so we're all
Yeah.
like looking at each other to figure out who's got the sniffles.
do you have the sniffles, Phyllis?
What?
Are you hiding something from us? Do we need to fire you?
Well,
One not live.
If you can fire me from school, please.
sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could.
No, I'm saying that, it's like, a lot of people are like scared of getting.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, I don't want it to, but the thing is, I keep wondering since I've been teaching here, like
It's
so long, have I picked it up, not noticed or something?
Yeah,
Like,
I
I'm
honestly
totally
couldn't
What if
probably
people
tell.
picked it up?
I don't know. I haven't been sick all year. Did I get it? I'm just like,
In
No,
fact,
get it.
COVID cured all of your allergies and illnesses.
Dude,
oh, I
honestly,
still have
maybe
allergies. I've had allergies all
that
school
week
year.
if You and I had really bad nose. You and I had
Oh,
really bad
yeah.
congestion. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it was.
It doesn't really cause congestion though, it's more of a respiratory.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like dry respiratory, I thought. Yeah. I think some people can have oddball symptoms here and there, but it's rare. Some people get like they say they have a stomach bug, but that's kind of
Yeah, but it's a respiratory
Yeah.
infection, not congestion.
I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, and these masks help so much.
Dude, at the beginning of the year, I could like feel myself breathing like a lot.
Now it's normal.
No.
Yeah, now I'm just used to it.
Maybe you have stronger lungs, or not.
No.
That was actually a fad for a while, where you would have athletes run wearing a restricted breathing mask. But a lot of research shows that it doesn't really help you, because the thought was since you're having to breathe harder, it's going to
fills you-
increase
yeah,
your
I
lung
can
capacity.
understand how we would think that.
Yeah,
Very
but
stupid.
it doesn't pan out. If you want to increase lung capacity, you just have to do cardio, like at a certain heart rate.
And like,
Make
practice
yourself breathe.
holding your breath underwater.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have
yeah,
asthma,
yeah.
but I have asthma because that's weird.
I
Because
developed
I
my
did
lung
swimming.
capacity through playing trumpet and singing.
Did you get an allergic reaction to chlorine or
I
something?
don't know.
By screaming.
Like it has to be because I've been very active and so like I've done sports since I was born,
Mhm.
so I don't know if I just got like bad.
You have to
Mm.
Lungs.
You know,
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
You only get TV screen.
Strange. Hey, there he is. All right, so this guy Senator McCarthy got extremely popular.
Yeah.
He's a communist.
Oh, he's-
Anti-communist.
Yeah.
So he's trying to root them out, right? So
He was probably communist.
it's a double agent. But nah, I wouldn't say that.
You would trust the person trying to root out communists, wouldn't you?
Well, the thing is, history is actually kind of funny because during his lifetime, he was a hero. After he died, a lot of history books slammed him as a fearmonger, as a vain man who's simply playing on our feelings. But then some more recent historians actually have been coming out and saying he was right. So that's the tricky thing about history, is it's always up to interpretation. The data doesn't change unless something's uncovered. The interpretations can. So it's a tricky thing. So so here he's giving a display where he's showing like the likelihood of people having communist infiltrators. And I don't know what's the deal with those districts. So like that is just like funky.
District 12.
Yeah, because it's like, look at that, like
District
3 states, you get like weird shit, just like, what? Okay,
Why does Texas
wait,
have like
Wait, can you go back to that?
yeah, look at this, like,
Why are there? Did he like combine? Did they combine a couple?
I don't know what
states?
that is. I don't know, like, it's even blank of labels, like, see, he's like, like, I don't
What
know.
did they
if that's-
combine Texas with?
I
It's
think they
Louisiana right
whited, Mr. Wagner, I think they whited that out.
Yeah, they might have.
Maybe it's just really, really badly
And I think it's really badly photoshopped.
yeah
Because they didn't want to like
show
like what was on there.
Photoshop before they had the shop. All right, so
McCarthyism.
yeah, McCarthyism. So
Oh boy.
this is a little something you should know. It's one of those things, though, that if it is fear mongering, you don't want to find yourself on the receiving end of it, right? So it could be bad because this idea of having a witch hunt could be very bad. Like, let's say your particular faith one day might be persecuted. Well, then you might have you and your family and your church rooted out for this. Or let's say your political ideology. Like, I vote for this political party. Now your political party is seen as public enemy.
Oh, it's another Joseph.
Led by Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy, the federal government intensified its efforts to root out communism from America. Much of the pressure to find these sympathizers was intensified by the FBI Director, J. Edgar Hoover, and the Attorney General at that time, who's like the lead lawyer for the executive branch of the federal government, who claimed that disloyal communists were throughout all of America. McCarthy used the House Un-American Activities Committee, because like they have different committees within the Senate and the House and stuff like that for different things like national security, intelligence, trade, business, all that stuff, as the main investigative body against suspected communists. The HUAC interrogated activists, government officials, educators.
Also American Activities Committee.
Sounds
Cool.
like. The HUAC made major headlines when the president of the Screen Actors Guild, Ronald Reagan, so he's kind of like, it's kind of like an
Bless
actor's
you.
club, bless you, testified that Hollywood was full of communists, and many there were creating pro-communist movies and material. So, oh my goodness.
How do you make a pro-communist movie without anyone knowing?
Well, he's saying it's subtle, right? It's subtle. What's funny?
It's subtle pro-communism.
Well, what's funny is you could see this kind of thing on steroids in China and the Soviet Union, where they would have committees like this, and then the people who come up to the committee wind up in the gulag, where they would screen books and movies, and they wound up getting rid of 90% of them, unless they were approved by the party. In America, we did go through a bit of this, but we didn't like to start banning all this stuff like the communists did. But still, it was like a reflection of our fears were so much that maybe we were pushing into our own liberties, which is dangerous. If you're going to trade liberty for safety, it's a dangerous thing. I think we're going to do one more after this one. We're going to call it good because I only go through so much in a day.
Is this McCarthy related to General MacArthur?
That was an actor.
That was Matt Arthur.
Somebody in that.
Mick Carthy.
I want to do.
Mick Kinsey.
No, they're better sandwiches.
Yeah.
I don't do like that.
Big Macs are honestly good.
No, they're not.
It's alright.
Dude, they're okay.
I
Alright.
don't like it. I don't like.
They're
The Mac sauce is
almost
pretty good.
any burger from Whataburger is better than. And all of them are bigger than the Big Mac. When I first bought it
Mac
once,
sauce is good though.
and I was like, okay, so this is gonna be like a
That's the
huge
part I hate.
burger. It was so small.
You don't like the Mac
That's the part I
sauce?
hate.
That's the only good part about the Big Mac.
Well,
You know what's really good though? A patty melt from Whataburger.
No,
Yes, it's good.
the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich is the best.
I bet it's good.
Yes.
Sweet and spicy bacon burger.
Mm-mm. Okay, what else orders at Taco Bell? Oh wait, it changes every.
Chicken quesadilla.
Quesadillas were really good. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna write down guac.
yeah, you don't have to write that down.
What?
No, what you just really need to know is that you really just need to know Joseph MacArthur is, and what McCarthyism is. Like, they're just trying to root out communists, right? Where there's a scare that there's communists all throughout America. And there was a lot of people who were trying to change the culture because at this time, we didn't know quite how deadly communism was, right? And so for a lot of people who believed that a top-down planning approach for society, let the experts run society. Well, that's what communism's supposed to be about. You let the smartest people run things and it'll run better, right? Well, I mean, it didn't quite
Unless the
work that
smart
way.
people turn evil.
You know, they turn evil, and what do? They start getting rid of the other smart people because they don't want to get
What if
obsolete.
Einstein was evil?
Evil Einstein.
Evil Einstein would be
Well,
too.
Einstein.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go. Hey, let's go ahead to our last one for the day. And
Yay.
here, even Walt
Walt
Disney.
Disney.
Yeah, Walt Disney found himself under the scrutiny. And we're going to
He's
see
a
McCarthy.
communist?
No, he wasn't. But
Well, I mean, his party's a little bit communist.
he is going to, no, Disney is actually going to fire some of his artists, though, because he himself is going to accuse them of it.
Of communism?
So anti-communist sentiment increased in America as popular figures such as Walt Disney claimed that the entertainment industry was full with Reds. Remember, Reds are communists. So
How dare
Disney,
those things.
Ronald Reagan, McCarthy, all these guys, J. Edgar Hoover were like, look, Hollywood's full of communists. Hollywood began to build a blacklist, which would unofficially prohibit accused communists from finding work in the entertainment industry. They say there's something like that again today
For who?
for people who are like not politically aligned with like the clique down there, right? So like,
That's lame, because they're all
Like-
super liberal.
That's why.
yeah, but so
Like
it's,
if,
this is
like,
awesome.
a lot of people have lost jobs because they support Trump.
And stuff like that. Yeah, so you could say that. Yeah, so you could say that it's kind of like that again.
Because he's super conservative.
So, after being exposed by an ex-communist, Alger Hiss, one of the prime movers of FDR's New Deal and State Department official under FDR during Yalta Conference, was called before this committee. He's the guy who essentially set up the meetings between Joseph Stalin and FDR.
Wait, who?
This guy, Alger Hiss.
So, where's that?
The case made headlines. He's the guy he was behind a lot of FDR's New Deal. And so he was State Department official. The State Department is what helps the executive branch talk to other countries. Hiss set up some of the meetings and helped FDR befriend Joseph Stalin. This case made headlines as members of Congress, especially the young Richard Nixon, and this is how he's going to become famous, from California, grilled this ex-official over these allegations. It then came to light in the 1930s. Hiss had passed government secrets on to the communist operative. So he was actually giving communist operatives American intelligence.
Who is?
This guy Hiss, this FDR official. So now they're just like, oh my gosh, even we had during World War II, we had essentially a communist spy be one of the president's top advisors. So this like freaked people out. They're like, oh my gosh, the communists are all over the place. And that's where we're going to end off today.
Communism is everywhere.
You could say so. I would say that the old school kind, not so much. Not so
Starbucks
much.
is super communist.
Hold up, I can't move.
Well,
I'll get it.
I would say that they are very left-leaning in a lot of their donations and stuff.
Yeah, but they also like never have enough things. And, like they always run out of their stuff.
Well, I don't like spending that much on coffee. All right, folks, I'm going to talk to you later. That's going to end our lecture for today. And next week is a B week. So that means there's going to be a B day on Friday.
Can the students like decide what's an A and B day, please?